Good evening. This is the Common Sense Party Podcast. I'm your host, the OTTLEY. It's the Common Sense Podcast. Our mission is to inform our listeners of that which affects the everyday person. Rate, review, follow, subscribe, give us 4 stars, give us 5 stars, give us 4 stars, give us 3 stars, give us 2 stars. Give us any amount of stars, because if you don't, we'll just assume that we're doing it properly. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. We're available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Samsung Podcast, Pandora, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and yes, we're still working to get a Apple ID so we can be on Apple Podcasts. You can support the podcast via Cash App or Instagram. The information is available on our About page on Spotify. You can also contact us at the commonsensepod@gmail.com. We're available on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Today, we will be talking about Moscow Mitch. Yes, Mitch McConnell retires today from the Senate after 17 years, but he can stay until November, and he's out. Who's going to run the Senate or the Senate minority leader? Then we'll talk about how Ted Cruz is on the hot seat. Rich people complaining about Trump ruling, and then we'll talk about what black people can do to assure Biden getting in, because since everybody wants him out, that's not a good thing. But first, we will start with Moscow Mitch. Yes, his nickname in Kentucky is Moscow Mitch, but today he did this. He said, yeah.
This will be my last term as Republican leader of the Senate.
Yes,
after a nearly 17-year run as the U.S. Senate's top Republican, Mitch McConnell on Wednesday announced he will step down from his leadership role in November.
2027. One of life's most underappreciated talents is to know.
So let's hear what the pundits had to say about
chapter.
McConnell's announcement comes after a year in which his age and his health prompted speculation he might no longer be up to the job, a fact he appeared to acknowledge.
I'm no longer the young man sitting in the back, hoping colleagues would remember my name. I'm the next generation of leadership. This week has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
McConnell twice last summer froze up while making remarks in public, raising questions about his ability to continue to carry out the duties of his high-powered job.
A selected nominee who is widely recognized not only as one of America's sharpest legal minds,
the powerful Senate leader will be remembered for his unprecedented refusal to allow then Democratic President Barack Obama to fill a U.S. Supreme Court seat following the 2016 death of Justice Antonin Scalia, that may have contributed to Republican support for candidate Donald Trump, who won the election that year, and with McConnell's help, cemented a 6-3 conservative majority in the Supreme Court. But his hold on power slipped in 2020 when Democrats retook the Senate and then expanded their majority in 2022. McConnell indicated that he plans to serve out the rest of his term in the Senate, which extends through January 2027.
That's what he ran. Someone ran against him in Kentucky, but they still didn't win. But who knows what will happen with the party? Who's going to replace him? They say there's 3 Johns up trying to replace him. So, but yes, Moscow Mitch has retired. Probably serve his term out within until 2027, but that's 3 more years. I doubt he'll make it 3 more years. I do apologize, but I don't think he'll make it 3 more years. All right. Moving on to our
But we're going to live with his legacy for a very long time. Question before us, what exactly is the price we'll all pay for the single greatest legacy of McConnell's 17 years as the head of Senate Republicans? That is, of course, the turbocharged conservative majority on the U.S. Supreme Court. There's also his legislative legacy, the bills passed under 3 presidents, including the vast majority of Trump's agenda. But towering over all of it, and likely to last lasts long beyond McConnell's tenure and his life is the work of the 3 justices whose nominations McConnell rammed through the Senate. Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and Brett Kavanaugh, one of which, Gorsuch, happened only because McConnell denied then President Barack Obama an opportunity to appoint his justice. The 3 justices supplied the majority that overturned Roe versus Wade, that wildly unpopular decision, overturned affirmative action in college admissions, and derailed a plan to bring billions in student debt relief to Americans. We could go on and on. We cover all of this on this broadcast all the time. But the court is today, right now, dealing with a slew of incredibly consequential cases involving the current frontrunner for the Republican nomination, the disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted ex-president Donald Trump. He is the same guy that McConnell enabled at every step of the way, all in order to cement that legacy on the courts. McConnell now steps down from his role as the linchpin of the Senate Republican caucus, with his party basically a vestige of an authoritarian movement attached to a man who disagrees with many of McConnell's long-held foreign policy views. McConnell even hinted at that distance between himself and the MAGA movement at his announcement today.
It's why I worked so hard to get the national security package passed earlier this month. Believe me, I know the politics within my party at this particular moment.
They fixed the laws in Texas so they can
is not wild.
allow more.
So there's anything that sums up McConnell's relationship with Donald Trump and that MAGA movement, how it defines our politics today, would be the moment he pinned the blame for the deadly insurrection on Donald Trump, while in the same nanosecond voting to acquit him during that second impeachment trial.
President Trump's actions preceded the riot for a disgraceful dereliction
that I've ever heard.
Duty. The House accused the former president of, quote,
Republican heavy on this one.
That is a specific term
not my
from
friend.
the criminal law. Let me just put that aside for a moment and reiterate something I said weeks ago. There's no question that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it.
That is where we start today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut is our guest. He sits on the Judiciary Committee, plus NYU law professor and former clerk to Judge Sonia Sotomayor. Melissa Murray is back. And back with me at the table, former U.S. Senator and co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast. Our friend Claire McCaskill is here. Claire, we start with you. We talked before the show a little bit, and during that rather exciting technical meltdown, what you have so many professional and personal experiences, stories, interactions with McConnell. But what was your first thought today when you saw the announcement?
I don't understand
that there's trouble in the caucus. I think he is. Here's what Mitch McConnell. Mitch cares mostly about power and his party.
He lied about.
He is a traditional leader in that way. It's not really about Mitch. It's about that. He loves being in charge. And so what he's seeing right now is how can he facilitate getting a leader of the Senate that is not going to be crazy town. That's not going to be a Josh Hawley or a Ted Cruz or Rand Paul, I think all of whom have called him liars in public. I mean, there's real friction in the caucus at this point. So I think he's trying to give enough time, knowing that he probably couldn't get reelected again. If he wanted to be the leader for the next Congress, he probably couldn't get elected again. He's probably trying to give someone enough time to gather the votes and to do the things necessary. And I'm sure he's hopeful that is someone who is not in Trump's back pocket. And they're now a number of senators that are in Trump's back pocket. Mitch McConnell's not one of them, and frankly, most of the people running to replace him aren't either. It's a crowded back pocket. It's a crowded back pocket. I want to. I mean, look at the editorial choices we make are all a consequence of Trump's picks to the Supreme Court and McConnell's conduct in getting them confirmed. Starting with his denial of Merrick Garland his seat on the court. McConnell made the point himself that he's really good at reading politics. Do you think McConnell is aware that the reason he's a minority leader and not a majority leader is because of the court's decision on Dobbs? I think he does know that he's responsible for Dobbs. I think we should not forget. I think we don't often enough talk about the dark money in politics. It is so.
Still nothing. They can be. There's a possibility that they can be under investigation for working with a Russian agent if they keep this up. All right. More about it.
I'm just gonna stand by. Lock him up. Lock him up. Lock him up. No evidence. Make fun of him. But failure is small. You spent both day and money. Told them. Yeah. Told them. How can you let people who don't know how to lead you? Nothing wrong. It was a lost kind of eat. I'm not done on you. No, what out of the eating quick.
Minneapolis, Portland, Austin, Texas cut $150 million from the police fund. Well, there is that. People's Republican Travis County, a different place.
New polling supports that which so many of us here in the Lone Star State have been suspecting and hoping Ted Cruz is on his way out.
And I will say, my race here in Texas is a battleground race. The Democrats are spending over $100 million. Chuck Schumer's made clear I'm his number one target. George Soros is pouring millions of dollars into the state of Texas. My last race, as you know, Maria, I won by less than 3 points because I'm the Democrats' top target. And so I'm grateful for the people all across the country that go to tedcruz.org, that make contributions, that support our campaign, because I'll give you my word, I'm going to keep fighting for the rule of law, for the Constitution, for the Bill of Rights, and I'm going to keep fighting to secure the border, even as we see these radicals undermine our safety. We just had a poll last week that showed it as a 1-point race, and yet we can expect Mitch again not to spend any money to defend me, which means the only way that we hold on is if the folks watching this show go to tedcruz.org right now, go online to tedcruz.org, make a contribution of $5, $10, $25, $50, $100, because my race, my support is not from the big money special interests in Washington, D.C. It is from constitutional conservatives across the country who go to tedcruz.org and who help give me the resources to withstand $100 million from these left-wing Democrats and Marxists who are trying to invade this country and destroy this country.
This is a bit of an update from a story we covered earlier this month. To be fair, living as a Democrat in Texas gives you some trust issues. Everything can look like a slam dunk one way, but at the last minute, the Republicans pull a Hail Mary out of nowhere, and all hope of justice and righteousness are lost. If you want an example of what I'm talking about, just look at all of the drama going on with our very crime-happy Attorney General Ken Paxton. But the reason things like this happen so often down here is because, frankly, the Republicans have been running the state for decades. Not forever, though. People seem to forget that Texas wasn't always the reliably red state that it is today. This has really only been a consistent pattern for the last 30 years or so. And in the grand scheme of political office terms and election cycles, that's really not that long. However, in that time, state-level Republicans have really solidified their stronghold on the Capitol. They've done this by way of redistricting and gerrymandering, but also by limiting voting access to people who are most likely to vote blue, i.e. college students, black and brown people, people in the cities, etc. They also protect their own to a shameless degree. Again, just go look at what's been going on with Ken Paxton. Most recently, the party of small government has been interfering in local city and county-wide elections, but coincidentally, they're only doing so in blue districts. They've also been interfering in the public school systems, and if you want an example of that, just go look at what's been going on in HISD, the Houston Independent School District. However, even with all of that, the Republican grip on Texas is starting to loosen. For example, Texas still very much blames the Republicans, specifically the Republican governor, for what happened with the power grid during the polar vortex of 2021. And you might think, well, people have short memories and short attention spans, so they can't possibly still be mad about something that happened 3 years ago. But you would think wrong. In this particular case, it's not like the grid failure of February 2021 was some eye-opening event that led those in charge to immediately fix the problem now that they and the public were aware of how big the problem actually was. No, they've done nothing to strengthen the grid, and now every time the temperatures in Texas are either too hot or too cold, Texans are bombarded with messages to conserve our energy, like it's our problem to fix, like this is a thing that we're supposed to take personal responsibility for. And yes, this is Texas, and yes, the summers are hotter now than I've ever seen them, with triple-digit days becoming the new normal in the summer. How dare you purport to govern a southern state while not doing anything to account for the very unique conditions facing the people living within that state? And every time the weather gets crazy, which again is often, Texans are served with fresh reminders of what happened 3 years ago. And we're reminded that our Republican-run state government hasn't done anything to solve a very solvable problem, apart from asking people to lower their AC usage when it's 100+ degrees outside. Comment sections on those types of posts and announcements are usually incredibly defiant and incredulous, seemingly from people on both sides of the political aisle. And with that defiance and incredulity, fresh disdain for Ted Cruz also gets dragged up every time the temperature fluctuates. This is the man who not only fled to Cancun while people in his state were literally freezing to death, but he later went to Florida to talk smack about all the Texans who were mad at him for fleeing. Again, this was Texans on both sides of the political aisle. That's like going to your in-laws to talk smack about your own family. Who does that? Like, maybe a lot of people do, but you get my point. Anyway, some of his supporters did ask, what do you want him to do anyway? Just stay here and freeze like the rest of us? Yeah, a little bit. A little solidarity with your constituents would have been the least that Ted Cruz could have done, but also Democrats across the state certainly found things to do. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a congresswoman from New York, flew all the way down to Texas while Ted Cruz was on his way out to help distribute aid and fundraise. She helped raise $4 million in recovery funds for the state. Also, Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat who narrowly lost the Senate seat to Ted Cruz years before and was a private citizen at the time, organized efforts to attend to the elderly and other vulnerable populations during the freeze. And in that time, since that fiasco, especially in recent months, Ted Cruz has kept a shockingly low profile, especially for a man who is up for re-election. I hear he has a podcast now, which I have never listened to, and I never will, but that seems to be taking up most of his time these days. I can't say whether or not Cruz thought that this lower profile would actually help or hurt him in the 2024 election, but according to the latest polling data, the top Democratic contender for the Senate seat is currently tied with him. And just another reminder that this is Texas and this is a big deal. And just another reminder that Ted Cruz only barely won his last re-election in 2018 when Beto O'Rourke challenged him as a Democrat. Colin Allred, the current Democratic challenger, looks like he wants to finish what Beto started, which, by the way, I will give Beto all the credit all day long for what he accomplished in Texas in 2018. His Senate race is not to be downplayed or dismissed. But Colin Allred is more likable than Beto in a lot of ways. He checks more boxes. He's less scandalous. He has a nice smile. He plays football. These are things that matter to the voting public. Another Senate contender, Roland Gutierrez, seems to think that Texas won't elect a black senator, but the poll results suggest otherwise. Also, if Allred and Cruz are each polling at 44%, where is Gutierrez in any of that? Why is he even talking? Anyway, on top of all of that, Cruz isn't getting a whole lot of investment from his party for his re-election campaign. Mitch McConnell would rather spend Republican money elsewhere, it would seem.
So as always, take polling with a grain of salt. It's easy to get excited, and results like this are certainly encouraging, but we all know by now that what happens in polls and what happens in voting booths are sometimes very different. We also know that 9 months is a long time when it comes to a political campaign. A lot can happen between now and November. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe.
I really can't stand people who lie. And one of those people who keeps lying is Senator Tim Scott. So Fox had a town hall the other day with Donald Trump. And Senator Tim Scott stood up and literally said this out of his mouth. And it's just a straight up lie.
Who's the president who brought the most money in for historically black colleges and universities? Donald Trump. Who's the president who brought the most money in for historically black colleges and universities? Donald Trump. Who's the president who brought...
That, y'all, is a straight up lie. Michael, at 10:38 this morning, I sent a text to Senator Tim Scott that says, Senator, where is the proof to back this up? There's nothing to back this up. Please have your staff send me an email to corroborate this statement. I'll gladly show it on my show, but none of this can be verified. He's lying.
He is lying. Just like he lied and blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act when he said that the sticking point was defund the police. And then in late September of 2021, the Fraternal Order of Police and the International Association of Police Chiefs put out a joint statement refuting what he said. And they said that no time was defund the police discussed in the negotiations. It was never part of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So in 2021, the Biden-Harris administration allocated...
I'm sorry. You mean, I'm sorry, when you talk about a statement, you mean this one right here?
Absolutely. I have a copy of it. Absolutely. They put out a joint statement.
This is the statement right here. And they said, despite some media reports, at no point did any legislative draft propose defunding the police. In fact, the legislation specifically provided additional funding to assist law enforcement agencies in training, agency accreditation, and data collection initiatives. That's what they said. Tim Scott is straight lying.
Correct. And he continues to lie. This is why he's backing a liar. Tim Scott is like the Tim Scott is really, he's really a disappointment. Even if you hate Republicans, hate black Republicans, things like this. Just as a black man who stood on the U.S. Senate floor and talked about the number of times he was pulled over by police. Okay? For him to come out and lie like this. $5.8 billion was allocated in 2021 by the Biden-Harris administration to HBCUs. It was from the budget, it was from the American Rescue Plan, etc. A record number, more than the Trump administration. Tim Scott is lying. And also, you want to talk about opportunity zones and things like this. There's no evidence of opportunity zones working. Okay, he'll talk about the jobs that Trump created, etc. NBC.
First of all, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. Hold on, and let me be clear. 6 months after those belongs, that the pastor out of Baltimore who stood with Trump and Tim Scott and making the announcement at the White House, we had him on this show, and he said they done damn thing. Before Trump left the Oval Office or forced out after he lost, I reached out to them and said, can you provide me a report or an analysis or an update on these opportunity zones? No one even responded. So he lies about that as well. And so this is the thing, Matt. This is the thing, Matt, that, again, why does he fact check? But see, Tim Scott knows he can stand in front of a group of bunch of white people, Republicans, and they gonna clap at that nonsense. Nobody on Fox News is gonna fact check him. And again, he won't respond to a text. He won't come on black-owned media because he knows it's easier to lie to white conservatives than it is to push a lot of black people knowing full well we're going to fact check your mind.
Stephen A. Smith. This has been the Common Sense Party Pod. We will see you next week.
Well, everyone, I wanted to just start by restating the obvious. The impeachment investigation essentially ended yesterday in substance, if not in form, with the explosive revelation that Mr. Smirnov's allegations about Ukrainian Burisma payments to Joe Biden were concocted along with Russian intelligence agents, and it appears like the whole thing is not only obviously false and fraudulent, but a product of Russian disinformation and propaganda. And that's been the motor force behind this investigation for more than a year.
And the FBI, I mean, Chris Wray didn't want to let us have the form because he said this guy was such a valued source. Somebody's asked the FBI, really? This is your valued source? If he's now some spy? I mean, holy cow. So it doesn't change our facts. Hunter Biden makes a call. Devin Archer told us he made a call to his dad, to Joe Biden. And then 3 days later, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine and conditions the release of American tax money on the firing of the prosecutor, applying the pressure to the company that Hunter Biden sat on the board of. Those facts, they don't change regardless of what this confidential human source has said.
Russia hoax. What part of it is the hoax? Is it the war in Ukraine? Is it the death of Navalny? There's not a Russian hoax. There's been a series of efforts by Vladimir Putin to destabilize and undermine American political democracy. And he's done the same thing in other countries around the world.
I got to go pick it up.
story, even as all indicators say that the American people and experts aren't interested. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to play in this video, but as a reminder, the Republican effort to impeach President Biden has just been one defeat after another, including this most recent one here.
Major breaking news. Former FBI informant Alexander Smirnov, who is accused of spreading false information about the Bidens, will now stay behind bars pending trial. Prosecutors raising serious concerns that if he was not remanded, he could have fled the country. The decision from Los Angeles Judge Otis Wright overhauling a Las Vegas federal magistrate that allowed him to stay out on bail.
And this is the guy, by the way, who provided the key allegations to the Republicans for their Biden impeachment inquiry, right? That was key, and we'll get into that as a reminder. Well, he was arrested for making false statements to the FBI, those allegations in question. He admitted while he was in FBI custody that he did so effectively on behalf of Russian intelligence, or that he was regurgitating Russian disinformation from Russian intelligence about Joe and Hunter Biden. And then he was taken back into custody because prosecutors had a credible reason to believe that he would try to flee the country. So that's not good. But James Comer and Jim Jordan were back on the Maria Bartiromo show, or whichever show he hosts on the, or she hosts on the Fox Propaganda Network, trying to resuscitate the story. But you can see their heart's not in it anymore.
With Jim Biden, he said some things that aren't consistent with other people who we've interviewed, with other amounts of evidence that we have in the form of text messages and emails. And right now, as we speak, Maria, our staff's going over, reviewing all that to determine whether or not Jim Biden, in fact, told the truth in his transcribed interview.
So they're referring to Jim Biden, President Biden's brother, who they got to testify under oath. They have no evidence that he lied or committed any sort of misdeed, but again, they're desperate for something, right, to distract from what's going on with Alexander Smirnov, their key informant. The second key smoking informant, by the way, who's been indicted by the FBI, right? So they have a pretty weak track record with their smoking guns and key informants, but I digress. Here's another clip in which Jim Jordan also shows up, and Maria Bartiromo asks them about this informant.
Chairman Comer, your Democrat colleagues are mocking the investigation. You know that. They say it's all Russian disinformation. So give us your take on Mr. Smirnov now being indicted and saying that a Russian passed on the story. And I also want to get your take on this latest information that you have gotten from Mr. Galanis, who is still in prison?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all we knew about Smirnov was the 1023 allegation. We knew from FBI sources that the FBI had never investigated it, and all we knew was what Christopher Wray told us, that this informant was one of their most trusted and highest paid in the Bureau, and he had been in that position for over 10 years. So that's all we knew about him. He wasn't an important part of the case, but it was a tip that we should investigate. We are not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to investigate every allegation of Biden influence peddling. With respect to Galanis, the individual we interviewed this past Friday, what we learned was very similar to what Tony Bobulinski said.
But produced no evidence, right? And now, so what's funny is two things that Comer said in that exchange. Number one, all we were told was that, that this FBI confidential source was credible, right? That's all we were told. And it was never that important to begin with. So first, I want to address the idea that all they were told by the FBI was that the source in question was credible, because that's not quite accurate. And this is from a Republican Congressman, Ken Buck.
Well, Kayla, it's even more of an imagined history now. Obviously, this witness, and we were warned at the time that we received the document outlining this witness's testimony. We were warned that the credibility of the statement was not known. And yet, people, my colleagues, went out and talked to the public about how this was credible and how it was damning and how it proved President Biden's, at the time, Vice President Biden's complicity in receiving bribes.
So they were told by the FBI that though the source had proven credible in the past, there was nothing verified about these specific allegations. And so the FBI would not attest to their credibility. They were specifically told, we don't know if these things are credible. Comer's leaving that part out. He was, well, all the FBI told me was that this guy was credible. That's not all you were told. And you went and peddled and signal boosted the disinformation anyway. Then with respect to the claim that, well, it really wasn't that important to us anyway. We've played this montage before. It's about 60 seconds long, but it's worth reviewing. That is emphatically not the case. Republicans repeatedly stress the importance of the 1023/Alexander Smirnov allegations for the past 6, 7, 8 months.
House Oversight Chairman James Comer says he and his colleagues plan to drop a bombshell.
It's going to be Judgment Day tomorrow for the White House.
You have the confidential FBI informant who's basically saying that Joe Biden took $5 million from Burisma.
The informant was a highly valued human source for the FBI, a trusted,
highly credible informant.
A trusted, confidential informant. They had a credible source, one of their good sources.
Their most credible paid FBI informant.
We have determined the whistleblower is extremely credible.
The details come from an FBI informant who is very trusted.
A highly reliable informant that has always checked out all the information he's ever given us has checked out.
A confidential human source that had been reliable previously to the FBI. A confidential human source gave credible information. This FD 1023 is damning. I do a podcast 3 days a week, Verdict with Ted Cruz. The podcast has gone into the details.
This is a very crucial piece of our investigation.
A very crucial piece of our investigation. I like how they also allowed in there Ted Cruz to drop the fact that he is a part-time senator, full-time podcaster with The Verdict. By the way, a reminder that Ted Cruz is up for re-election in 2024, so let's help him out. Let's do him a solid. And let's relieve him of this pesky part-time Senate gig and make him a full-time podcaster by voting him out of the Senate.
Oh, sorry. There's a huge distinction. Pardon me, sir. There's a huge distinction. There's a huge distinction between whether it's appropriate for the family of a president to make money off of his name and whether that's ethical. But the question is specifically about what Joe Biden did when he was in office in vice president, whether he abused his power or whether he enriched his family members. And right now, there is zero evidence coming from the Oversight Committee that when he was vice president, he did either of those things.
There's $20 million that flowed through. You saw these accounts.
That's incorrect, sir. The bank records don't reflect that.
No, sir.
They don't specifically say, I looked at the bank records, they don't say that Joe Biden got any money from them. Have you read the bank records? They don't say Joe Biden's name. I'm not going to let you say things that are untrue, sir.
Well, sir, the truth is that $20 million flowed through this family, whichever way it went. There's no records
Sir,
taxes being paid, statutes fund, and you're saying that isn't okay. What was repeated? What was the product
record, sir? What's in the bank record is $50 billion of that money never even went to the Biden family. The other $5 million, there is zero, exactly zero.
Where did that $15 million go to? Where did that money go to then?
To Devin Archer and other business associates related to President.
There's over 20 shell corporations. Why would you set up a shell corporation that had absolutely nothing?
There's actually evidence from the oversight committee that those corporations had legitimate business dealings. You may define them as shell corporations.
And what are they? You see, then what are they?
Some of them are consulting firms. Some of them were law firms.
Listen. If you want to you just did the interview, but you're asking me a question. I'm trying to give you an answer, but
you're not giving me an honest answer, sir. You're repeating a talking point.
No, sir.
Debunked repeatedly. Have you read the bank records? Have you seen the bank records?
I have seen.
You don't say Joe Biden's name on them.
They say Hunter Biden's name, and
he wasn't vice president.
Influence to the big guy. He gave name, dates. Tony Bobulinski gave name, dates, times, and places.
Tony Bobulinski.
And those were pretty.
The question about the big guy.
See,
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say that he gave very damning testimony, and all you all want to focus on is one little grain of sand in a huge beach that has absolutely nothing to do with the final outcome. The truth is, $20 million flowed through this family. That's one shape, form, or fashion or another. They had, sir, it is not. They had $20 million that flowed through. It went through shell corporations. It went through alternate bank accounts. Now, why would you have these 20 bank accounts set up if you weren't trying to? Why would banks literally send memos out that say they have no product? We have to be careful of this. We need to get shy of this. Why would they send those out? Why would banks do that? You're focusing on one little thing and you're not looking at everything else.
Sir, I honor the idea that there are questions about whether it is ethical and appropriate for the family members of an elected official to profit off of something, but I also dispute the fact that we're focused on a grain of sand. I want to get to the point about these bank investigators, because you're talking about an email from 2018 that was sent out that Republicans shared that was about banks looking into a deal struck by Hunter Biden with this Chinese firm. The email that Republicans shared that came from these people overseeing this deal was actually the last page of a 4-page document. And earlier in that document, I'm sure you've read it, I hope you have, they quote, saying that the business activity is reasonable and consistent, also that they do not see any signs of bribery. So what you're citing is actually only a small piece of something that overall by senior investigators was declared to be a legitimate business enterprise.
I never...
Are really upset that Tish James was successful in proving he's a fraud. He now has to pay millions, upwards of $500 million, y'all, with interest and things along those lines. And plus you throw in the E.G. Carroll, another $83 million. Homie going to have to sell some stuff. But I want to show you again how delusional these people are. Here's Kevin O'Leary. You see him on the Shark Tank. This is literally what he says to Neil Cavuto on Fox News regarding this issue. This award, I mean, just leaving the whole Trump thing out of it and seeing what occurred here, and I'm no different than any other investor. I'm shocked at this. I can't even understand or fathom the decision at all. There's no rationale for it. And so let me give you a real-time experience I'm having regarding this, and I'm not the only one. It doesn't matter what the governor says. New York was already a loser state. Like California is a loser state. There are many loser states because of policy, high taxes, uncompetitive regulation. It was already on the top of the list of being a loser state. I would never invest in New York now, and I'm not the only person saying that. And here's a real-time situation. In development in real estate right now, the hottest asset class is very high-end data centers. They cost anywhere from $2.5 to $3.5 billion each. They're very expensive. They require low power. You need permits. But most of the major institutions in the world need more data centers, and that's why developers like me are doing this. Now, you need power. So New York has Niagara Falls. Normally, you'd consider that to put in one of these facilities, create 400 jobs, 5 more jobs for each of one of those for auxiliary services. I can't go to New York. So I'm going to Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia. Governor Stitt, Kevin Stitt, my staff have met with him. Governor Burgum, same thing. Governor Justice. Those are winner states. They don't do things like this. I have to syndicate that debt and all that equity. We're talking billions of dollars here. Do you think any foreign institution or any private equity firm or any pension fund would touch New York? No. And that's why I can't listen to any more of that babble. Y'all, here's why this is all BS. I don't know who the hell he think he's fooling. But you cannot be in the financial industry and you acting like you ain't got nothing involving New York. So that's stupid. And the thing that also cracks me up is how these people literally are defending a crook. Here's Jessica Tarlov taking them to school on Fox News. Watch this.
So, since Donald Trump ran the first time, he has been making this argument, if they could do this to me, they could do this to you. The average person is not inflating their wealth by $800 million to $2.2 billion. They're not sexually assaulting women. They're not storing classified documents in the toilet. They're not fomenting an insurrection. Mar-a-Lago, you remember that's what that's on this case. We can do like you do a lot. You know how to do that. It's not laundry list. Really? You're talking laundry list when we're talking about one top from me. So see,
they can't stand it when she's running these facts down. And the reason I just find this being an incredulous joy, because this is the party of law and order. And then I love this. There was no victim here. The banks were the victim. Let's be real clear. If starts this week, so I had to represent my hometown.
All right. Okay, that's a perfect explanation, no doubt about it. Let's get right into it, Roland, because we saw the South Carolina GOP primaries take place over this weekend. We saw another romp courtesy of Donald Trump beating Nikki Haley convincingly. I might add, the former governor of South Carolina losing convincingly. Your thoughts about whether or not I think she should call it a day. It's over. I think it's clearly obvious. It's been over for a while. She's determined to stay in the race through Super Tuesday, but her support is dwindling before our very eyes, and clearly nobody is standing in the way of Donald Trump. Your thoughts about what transpired there?
Well, first, the Koch network has already said they're pulling their campaign funding behind her. She doesn't have a pathway. I think she understands that Donald Trump poses an existential threat in terms of to the country. And what she is hoping for with all these court cases, that something will happen that will cause that support to dwindle. But it's not going to happen. His supporters are locked in. And the reality is there are a lot of Republicans who privately, they cannot stand him, but they are afraid of his supporters. So therefore, there's really no pathway for her. And so there's no doubt he's going to get the nomination. So now it just simply comes down to Trump versus Biden in November.
Does it really come down to Trump versus Biden, Roland, or do you see something transpiring with so much being made about I'm not going to disrespect the president of the United States. I'm not going to disrespect Joe Biden like that. And by the way, when I bring up his age, I'm not engaging in ageism. I'm not engaging in any kind of insults whatsoever. But he clearly does appears to have slowed a bit and has lost a step a bit. Do you foresee him being the Democratic nominee and really going against Trump and trying to get 4 more years?
I do. So again, barring anything health-wise happening between now and November, I think he is the nominee. There's no doubt that yes, that he has. You could say he's slowed a bit, but here's the thing that I got to remind people about. So look, the dude was 78 when he got elected in 2020. So I wasn't clueless about who I was voting for in 2020. But let me remind all the people out there who are like, oh my God, we need more options. Okay. These were the people also running. But Senator Bernie Sanders, Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Mike Bloomberg, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Tom Steyer, former Governor Deval Patrick, Michael Bennett, Andrew Yang. And so voters didn't pick any of, also remember, Senator Cory Booker, Senator Kamala Harris, all of them were in the campaign.
That's right.
Voters didn't pick any of them. So for people to go now, oh my God, we got to have somebody. Look, if I'm Biden Harris, and if I'm Democrat, what I'm doing is I'm stop whining, I'm stop complaining, I'm stop fretting, and I'm saying he's going to be our guy. And what I'm going to say is, are you concerned with somebody who you want to be out there who's virile and jogging, or do you want somebody who got stuff done? And that's what they should be focusing on. They should be saying, we got the infrastructure bill done. We got Build Back Better done. Inflation Reduction Act done. HBCU funding done. Insulin for 35 capping at $35 done. They should be focusing on competence and getting stuff done. They are allowing the narrative to be driven about his age. They should be saying, who do you want? An 82-year-old dude who gets stuff done, or somebody who's younger who doesn't get anything done?
Let me say this to you, Roland. I'm gonna pull a first over here. I'm gonna push back. I'm gonna push back on the great Roland Martin, because see, I'm in your lane, so I know my place. This ain't sports. I'm in your lane, so I let me let the American people know I know my damn place when it comes to me talking to Roland Martin about politics. Okay, this is my boy. I defer to you most times. Let me play devil's advocate and push back. The subject is not what Biden has done. If you're a Republican, you're a GOP member, you're going to have problems with what he's done. You're a liberal, you're a progressive, you're a Democrat, you're going to have very few problems with what he's been able to accomplish. To me, that's not the story. I don't think it's an issue of what he's done. I think moving forward, you're wondering what can he do over the next 4 years, because of the slippage you may have seen in him health-wise. I think that is the argument that folks have made, and I'll say this before I let you chime in. I've been on the record saying this. I think the Democratic Party should be utterly ashamed of itself, because in the year 2024, we are practically begging this soon-to-be 82-year-old president to run for re-election, because as a party, we couldn't find anyone else that we believed could beat Donald Trump. Now, to me, that is a problem with that. Not Biden. That's not his fault.
Right.
All of us getting older. This ain't Mork and Minnie from back in the day. We ain't getting younger. We all getting older. It's not a crime against him. But I do think it's unreal that the Democratic Party, who prides itself on being progressive and forward thinking, is depending on this man to win the presidency. That's a lot to ask of him, Roland, and that's my issue with the Dems. To that you say,
well, keep in mind, if Hillary Clinton had won in 2016,
okay,
you would have right now a 76-year-old in her second term. Okay. So you have to think about the election, not just in terms of 2020, but also what happened in 2016. And so the reality is Biden was the candidate at that time who brought experience, competence, stability, and no drama. Think about this year. You haven't had any cabinet resignations. The only drama you've had was the Secretary of Defense not telling them when he went to the hospital. And so they've been drama free. Frankly, that's been great. I do think there's some media reporters out there in D.C. who love the drama of Trump. And so I understand your point about, well, there should be younger people. But here's the deal. The Democrats' bench is deep right now. It is strong. But the reality is the last president who opted not to seek a second term was President Lyndon Baines Johnson. So voters had the moment he won in 2020, he was running in 2024. And again, I believe what they have to do is they're getting sucked into this, well, I need to have them here and here. No, their deal needs to be what we accomplish and, because I've not heard this yet, what we plan on accomplishing in the next 4 years. And so it's about establishing competency. And if I'm them, I'm also driving home the no drama, the all the other stuff. That's what I'm doing. I'm saying, guess what? We didn't have the craziness that happened when he was there. It was stability. And so that's what they have to be arguing. I just believe they're playing right into the media narrative of old, feeble, as opposed to no, competence. And we need a competent leader who can be trusted with the secrets of the country.
But what about Biden playing into it? You got Super Bowl Sunday. You got over 100 million viewers out there.
That was a mistake. They didn't do an interview. And that was a mistake. He absolutely should have done it. I understand not wanting to talk to Fox last year. I get it.
Right.
But he absolutely should have done the interview on Super Bowl Sunday. That was a mistake by his people. And again, I think what they're doing is even when after the special prosecutor report came out, he had already made comments earlier at the House at the Democratic caucus meeting at Lansdowne Resort, literally right next door to where I live. And he then goes to the White House and comes out again. For what? I already spoke on that. And so the mistake that they're making is they're not taking advantage of certain opportunities. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris, she's on the road. She's doing various events. But they've got to have him in the right positions. And so his team failed him on that mark. He should have done that interview.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I also think there's a reason they didn't do it. And I think it leans towards giving fodder or credence to some of the things that people on the right have been speculating about, because I certainly that was the first thought that jumped to my mind when I didn't see him capitalize off of an opportunity to speak to 100+ million people. But you brought up Vice President Kamala Harris, and I'll say this to you, Roland. We haven't heard enough about her. I'd ask you why.
I mean, actually, you have. Here's the deal. Go ahead here. You heard more about Vice President Kamala Harris than you have heard from every vice president combined in the last 50 years. Nobody ever talks about the vice president. Nobody. You cannot tell me one, other than misspelling potato, you can't tell me anything that Dan Quayle did. Dick Cheney was very powerful, but he was behind closed doors.
You heard a lot about Dick Cheney, though. You heard a lot about Dick Cheney. You got people thinking he was running the country.
Right. But the reality is, she's been out more. I think the problem is people have an expectation for her that surpasses what the VP actually does. The VP is not even a constitutional position. He serves at the pleasure of the president.
Her job is, frankly, to be back up in case anything happens to him. That's really what her job is. And so Biden, what he's done, he's actually had her out front more than any other VP. Think about how many times can you recall President Obama having Biden speak before him? Nope. So the reality is she's been out there. But one of the things that she was hurt by was the first year and a half of the presidency was COVID. She literally was stuck in D.C. And the second thing is, because the Senate is tied, she had to stay close to D.C. for tiebreaker vote. She broke the record of the most tiebreaker votes by vice president. So part of the problem is she has not been able to be more out into the public, but she's been out more than any other vice president.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. You're right, and I appreciate the education on that. But isn't that when you consider how she performed when she was a presidential candidate, going up against Biden and those folks at the time? Obviously, she didn't resonate, and I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. You have a lot of people who don't believe in her in a general election. But I want to read you a quote from the Wall Street Journal just this weekend because I wanted to. It was written by a columnist there. I believe it was Holman W. Jenkins Jr. He wrote in this week's Wall Street Journal. I want to put it up on the big screen for you right here, Roland. Here's what he said. It's time for Mr. Biden to step aside. He said the time for Mr. Biden to step aside is now. In Kamala Harris, Americans might discover a forerunner of a new breed of Democrat who actually believes in jailing criminals. It isn't impossible to imagine her brushing aside a softball Super Bowl interview to tell 123 million Americans she didn't become the first black female president to toss away the greatest generation's 79-year investment in global peace. If nothing else, President Harris would bring to the table a quality missing in the current two frontrunners, which would be obviously Trump and Biden. She would have to live in the world made on her watch. That's what they're saying. That's a potent argument, some would say, on behalf of Kamala Harris. How do you feel about that?
I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. like literally, as you were reading it, I was sitting there going, what the hell is he talking about?
He's talking about moving President Biden aside so Kamala Harris could step in and be the Democratic nominee to go up against Trump. That's what he's saying.
But he's talking about world peace and the greatest generation and jailing criminals. Here's the deal. Crime under President Biden and Harris has dropped. Major crime is dropped. You have a
no. He was complimenting her. He was saying that she would put away criminals, and I guess he was pointing to her time as the Attorney General in California,
which is also a lie that folks have been advancing because she was actually one of the architects of being smarter on crime as opposed to just jailing everybody. Look, here's the deal. What we have to recognize is that that happens. You have complete upheaval. Upheaval across the country, okay? And then you have people who are articulating saying, well, maybe you can have a brokered convention, more upheaval. The reality is this here. Biden is going to be the nominee. Vice President Harris ain't going nowhere. So we look at the polling data. Democrats are the ones who are, oh my God, we don't know. Democrats, this is very simple. Shut the hell up and get your asses in line. Because you know what MAGA is doing? Getting in line. A lot of people who said things about Trump, they're getting in line. They understand what the stakes are. This is the problem with Democrats. Democrats have a unique ability to snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat. They will sit here. Democrats will pass a bill and complain about what wasn't in the bill versus celebrate what was in the bill. Democrats need to shut up and be locked and loaded and saying, we are taking Trump and MAGA out. We're going to take control of the House. We're going to keep the Senate and keep Biden in. That's the choice unless something happens with his health and he opts not to run. As of today, he's running. They need to accept that reality. Ain't nobody coming on a white horse in a white cowboy hat saying, I'm saving the day. It ain't Gavin Newsom. It ain't Gretchen Whitmer. It ain't anybody else. This is your pick. And the bottom line is they've accomplished things Democrats have got to learn to understand about getting in line. He's running. Deal with it.
Do you believe that Gavin Newsom has done that? He certainly has said that in terms of his support for Biden. He certainly has said that in terms of if it's not Biden, it would be Vice President Kamala Harris. But nevertheless, he was the one on Fox News, on Sean Hannity's show, debating Ron DeSantis over policy. And it wasn't just the state of California versus the state of Florida as they portended it to be. It was far more than that. So there are some people out there who have said, and others, although a small portion of them, who have clamored for his ascension within the ranks of the Democratic Party. But do you believe that Gavin Newsom has done what you said the rest of the Democrats should do?
Absolutely. First of all, Newsom is focused on 2028. Okay, that's what he's doing. But he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing, and that's what Governor Westmore should be doing. That's what Governor Pritzker of Illinois should be doing. That's what Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania should be doing. That's what they all should be doing. They should be going on the offense, not playing defense. Offense, attack, beat them down. They're not doing that. And so we look at these polling data, and let's be real clear. What's happening between Israel and Hamas is having a huge impact on young voters.
Tell us why. Tell us why.
Well, because young voters are against the slaughtering of children, and they want to see a ceasefire. Biden is trying to do the thing diplomatically, but it's not playing well. He's running out of time. It's going to be a problem in a state like Michigan with a huge Muslim vote. It's going to impact that. But he's also going to deal with the reality the election is coming down to 7, max 8 states. Georgia, North Carolina, which Biden lost by 2.5 points last time. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. Those are the 7. Okay? And what he has to do is, people could say, well, he might barely win. Let me tell you something. Barely winning in politics is like winning. Go by 1 point. You still won. His job right now, they should be on the offense every single day. They are playing defense and they're hiding. His people need to wake up and go on the offense every day.
Well, let's get deeper into this because you're more qualified than most to talk about where I'm about to go. You say people need to wake up, meaning folks within the Democratic Party. What about the black community? Well, Trump had 12% in 2016, had 16% in 2020. Depending on which poll you look at, it's 12% now, or it's 20% from the black community. It literally has vacillated between 12 and 20%. You've got people, you see him at rallies speculating about the black support that he knows he's going to get, etc., etc. I'm thinking, I can't imagine black folks. Biden got 87% of the black vote in 2020. I think that would be around the same this go round. Here's the difference. I don't know if as many people will show up to the polls this upcoming election than did the last election. And that's where I think Trump could get an advantage, even if he's a convicted felon with 4 indictments and 91 counts against him. Even if he's a convicted felon, I still think he has a chance because not that many people are going to show up to the polls compared to 2020.
And remember,
you say what to that?
And remember what you have seen since 2012, when the last time Obama ran. You have seen a decrease in black voter participation.
Yes.
Now, what you also have to understand. Remember, Trump thanked black people for not voting in 2016. So what you're saying is correct. Now, what people have to understand is this here. And you and I are actually a part of the generation where the shift began to happen. Black voters 65 plus identify as Democrats. 55 to 64 less, but they still identify as Democrats. When you hit 55 and under, the number begins to drop. And so the further we get away from the black, from the civil rights movement, the black freedom movement, then you are seeing a different focus. But you're seeing African Americans who are entrepreneurs who are focused on taxes. 2022, I was in Georgia doing stuff for Warnock. I talked to a black woman, owned a business, a coffee shop. She said, look, I care about abortion, but I'm not having a baby. I own this business. I care more about taxes. She said, I'm listening to Herschel and Warnock. But people will go, wait a minute, this is a black woman. Black women hate Republicans more than anybody else. So, what you're seeing is a new generation of African Americans who have a different perspective than their parents. And so, what Democrats, and this is where they made a mistake, Stephen, the old way of reaching black folks, tried and true, target civil rights groups, go to black churches, focus on them, early October for 1 month, 5 weeks. The problem now is that, and I'll be very specific, white Democratic strategists have got to get rid of the old playbook and realize you now have to actually micro-target black people, spend more money to get the same voters out, and that's what they've been unwilling to do.
And do something for them more than once every 4 years.
Right, and you have to articulate what you've done, explain how there's been an impact. So the problem from a strategy standpoint, they've been unwilling to listen to black pollsters, black campaign strategists, and people on the ground. So the problem is, and you can run all the TV ads you want to, but you got to be knocking door to door. It has to be old school politics. And so that's
you got to get black folks that's going to work on your campaign willing to go door to door, because let's face reality, ain't a whole bunch of white people looking to knock door to door in black neighborhoods, if we're being real about it.
There you go. And then if you're talking about even our HBCUs, you have to be very clear. See, when the Biden folks go, we've allocated $7 billion HBCUs. Okay, that's a great number. But you got to say this here: the state of Florida allocated $122 million to FAMU. We gave FAMU $307 million. See, Joe Madison, God rest his soul, would always say, you got to put it where the ghost can get it.
Yes, he did.
What they're doing is they're speaking in broad ways. No, it has to be very specific. I love that scene from remember from Jungle Fever when Flipper was like, mine. The Biden-Harris folks got to say, we built that, and that, and that. We restored that, and that. They got to be specific. They got to be hammering over and over and over again. But they have to understand, African Americans are saying, what do I get for my vote? If you don't articulate what you've gotten, then they can assume I haven't gotten anything. And so that's the conundrum they are in. They have to actually spend more money and more time generating to get the same voters out. The old model, that's gone, bruh. There are fewer people today who go to church than they did 10 years ago. That model ain't gonna work.
Right.
It's done.
Yeah. Showing up to the black church, thinking that's going to curry votes and increase the vote. That's gone to get it done. That's by the way. Last question before I let you get on out of here. Donald Trump, the former president, now the leading GOP candidate, obviously, was campaigning in South Carolina this Friday. And I know you saw this, but I'm going to, because I just brought it up a few minutes ago, but I'm going to reiterate it for you specifically while I got you here. Speaking to an audience of mostly black Americans, I'm reading from an article in USA Today. Trump suggested, and it says inaccurately, that he is popular with African American voters. He said his 91 criminal indictments and mugshots were part of the reason. Quote, a lot of people said that's why the black people like me, that's why the black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against, and they actually viewed me as I'm being discriminated against. This is what he said to an event. He said it's been pretty amazing, but possibly maybe there's something there. This is what he's talking about. So he's comparing himself and his plight to that of black folks in the United States of America. Roland Martin, take it away.
You can't show me a black person in America who could lie on a loan application and get millions of loans and still be able to buy the business. You can't show me a black man who could sexually assault a woman, get convicted in civil court, and got to pay $83 million, and he's still walking around. And you damn sure can't show me no black man who took some classified documents to the crib, stuck them in the bathroom, and they still free. Ain't no way in hell Donald Trump is remotely like black folks who've been targeted by the DOJ. And we know COINTELPRO. Okay, Okay, Donald Trump, you got in trouble because of what you did. Don't be trying to sit there and say we identify with that. But see, that's the pathology that exists there. And look, it's some people out there who are stuck on stupid, and they might say that stuff, but nah, bro, we're not getting away with that. And
we're not gonna let them get away with it, Roland. But we know that a large, if not his entire contingent, will buy that hook, line, and sinker. And there are a plethora of black conservatives. And listen, I'm an independent. I don't always listen. I vote Democrat for the most part. The only Republican I ever voted for was Governor Chris Christie because I couldn't stand Corzine in New Jersey. But in the same breath, I keep my eyes open on both sides of the aisle in terms of how they view certain things. But when it comes to folks, you're a black conservative, even some of them gonna buy that hook, line, and sinker because they do believe that he's being pilloried and what have you because they're just trying to sway the election because Dems can't beat him on their own. That's their thinking.
Well, that's their thinking, but remember, they beat us behind once. And again, if Democrats focus and go on the offensive, they can give them that second L. And let me be real clear, we ain't wearing them ugly-ass shoes either.
Oh, by the way, you saw them parading around talking about those shoes are going to ingratiate African Americans even more. I saw that on Fox News the other day. I couldn't believe it.
Plus, I ain't going to wear no shoes with no red bottom because I ain't trying to slip on the court.
How about that? Like I'm you bringing me up. You taking a shot at me. I don't blame you. I deserve it. I deserve it. Appreciate